I'm going to talk to you about Black Myth Wukong.
All right.
Which came out this week. It is a monkey-based game. It is based on Journey to the West, Chinese mythology, and it is a action RPG with a melee combat focus, and it is a classic action RPG in that it is skill tree based as you level up your character, and it really is about just mastering simple systems that you kind of put little upgrades into along the way. You're not changing weapons along the way. You're not fundamentally changing how you play the game. You're kind of just honing your skills, your kind of simple set of skills in Black Myth Wukong. The presentation of this game started, I think, in 2020 was maybe the first reveal we had of this game, and it was not so good looking, and everyone was like, there's no way the game comes out and it looks that good.
It looked like
it was this thing that was like, it was like this impossibly good looking concept for a game that was like everyone read as a piece of hype media for an upcoming title. Fast forward to this week, the game comes out and it looks better than that. It is definitely playing for best looking game of the year. Is, I think, like from just like how much hardware it's trying to use. That's definitely a part of the intention of this game. You see that in the way that the levels are designed, in that they are very narrow, linear levels. It is really just about filling the screen with beautiful, dense detail. Lots of particle effects, lots of really high-end volumetric particle effects that developers typically steer clear of because they don't add that much to a game. But in this, where it's just really, it's showing itself off constantly, it shines through every time. It is a spectacular looking game. And on top of that, it is a delight to play. It is basically a boss gauntlet. It is boss after boss after boss. I think a lot of people were looking at this and going, it must be a Souls-like because it's an action RPG and melee combat. It is not. It is a lot more similar to, I guess, like a God of War type of game, in that it is cinematic heavy and it is story heavy, and it is, unlike God of War, just about boss.
So yeah, beyond that opening, because we played a little bit of this and we hit bosses, it does feel like it is just gauntlet mode versus there's no open worlds, there's no hubs really, or
it's not hubby. It is the spaces aren't entirely linear, but they are narrow, and the bosses that are kind of optional on the wings are worth pursuing for the spells that they'll drop and give you. So the way that the combat works is light and heavy attacks with a melee weapon. You also have, we're seeing the first one that you get given here is called Immobilize, which is useful throughout the entire game. I've finished the first act, which was like, I'm 4.5 hours into the game. And it is about working out how to best utilize all of the things that you have at your disposal, and building out your skill tree in a way that talks to your playstyle as well.
Who's this little guy?
This little guy is a testicle with like bits of skin tag hanging off him.
Beautiful.
It's very uncomfortable, but he's around the whole time.
Okay.
And from a combat perspective, you're kind of just like spamming your light attacks to build up a meter to make your heavy attacks more effective. Then you're using your heavy attacks in between using your spells, and you're just chipping away at boss health bars. And I would say, as a Souls veteran, the first act was fun but easy. So I kind of like first or second attempted pretty much every boss. After our horrible session the other day, we do have our first hands-on with this game recorded in the studio here with probably like 400 milliseconds of latency, which made this thing next to unplayable.
Pete was a trooper.
I was
He
I was
plugged on
complaining
and
the whole
like
time.
he did well the whole way through, but I was there. He wouldn't let me play it.
No.
And I was like, oh come on, it can't be that bad. But it was like, yeah, it had enough of a delay, I think, to really frustrate you beyond what the game was going for.
It did, and it soured my feelings about the game a little bit. But I went home and I was like, I want to play some last night, and I was like, I need to just get another hour into this thing, and I ended up playing 3.5 hours.
Yeah, awesome.
Like I was like, okay, I dig this, and the area. So the way the acts work, there's a story that I'm not fully following, and there's like characters that you'll meet along the way that are like dropping lore, but it is broken into acts, and it appears that those acts are separate worlds. Basically, it doesn't. I just kind of got picked up and dropped into a new zone.
Yeah, right.
Like a stony, sandy zone after this initial kind of foliage-heavy zone.
It looked like, from what we saw at the start of the story as well, because this is based on such dense foreign lore, or like mythos to what I think Westerners would know. It's like it has so much to draw from that it just assumes almost that you're either you know it or you're going to play catch-up, and it kind of enjoys reveling in that. It just charges ahead with... From what we saw in the cutscenes, it's like I have no idea what's happening. I'm gonna probably have to play catch up.
Which I think is good storytelling.
Totally.
Right? Like it doesn't labor on exposition really. It just lets characters be weird.
Yeah.
In a cool way. I'm really enjoying every cutscene because they're beautifully put together. There's some really cool direction, and there's some great pacing in the game where like there's meditation points, and it like asks you to stop and take a breath, and it so far is. Look, it's early. It's not early. We're in September, August. Where the fuck are we?
August.
Still. We're still in August. It could be my game of the year based on how it's tracking so far.
Yeah,
because
cool.
it is really fun to play, and unlike Elden Ring, I find so much work to play. This isn't work at all. This is joy, and
It's play.
It is play.
Well, we talked a lot. We talked while we were playing it about whether or not this is or isn't a Souls-like. And I agree with you, but I'm always interested because not just the fact that it's an action RPG, is that it does have like checkpoint shrines to rest at which respawn enemies. But again, and it does have challenging bosses. It didn't, and correct me if I'm wrong, it didn't seem to have the currency you were earning to upgrade. Was that persistent?
Yeah, you don't drop it when you die, and you spend it basically on upgrading armor sets that you get from bosses, killing bosses.
Okay.
And weapons as well that you get from killing bosses or doing kind of side mission-y stuff.
Because it still ticks the box. It ticks a few boxes that are Soul similar, but I'm not.
Souls light.
No, I think this feels more like action RPGs before Souls existed, and we had to compare.
Just
everything
looking
to
at
Dark
the
Souls.
enemy encounters you have here, it doesn't feel like they're a danger to you.
No, there are some beefier, smaller enemies, but for the most part, you just spam your way through everything until you get to the next boss fight. It doesn't even have like really those gauntlet runs to a boss that you kind of get out of the Souls games.
Because for all the
now
boxes,
I need to run through all this stuff.
all the boxes it ticks, it misses. Not misses. It doesn't tick a bunch of other boxes, which I think you're right does classify it as a more traditional Souls-like. Which it's nice to not have to feel like, oh, it's another version of this game, which everyone's kind of has been doing for the last, 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, it definitely has its references in there in some of the design elements that have become kind of ubiquitous with RPGs now, like since Souls for sure, but it's not really any different to an old Final Fantasy resting at a camp, right? Like that stuff existed before
The
Souls
one
as well,
weapon idea as well, as you mentioned, and just getting good at the combat with that, and it didn't seem to be a heap about like parrying. It was more just like
I still haven't found a parry. I have a few spells and all of them are cool. Every time I find one, there's ultimates. Killing this guy, who like we
Big baby
managed to squeeze through in our first session.
Boss baby.
You get the ability to turn into him. Like that's the monkey
What?
magic, right?
Oh, that's the monkey magic.
So your ultimate, you turn into him and do a head smash, and then you turn back into the monkey.
Amazing.
You can morph into some of the other bosses that you kill.
One of the early powers was you spawn like 6 more versions of yourself, a bunch of monkeys that all just go nuts and which was obviously like a depowered thing you're going to get later on in the game. But cool. All right. Oh, I was not going to play this because I was tired of Elden Ring. Like I was exhausted by the Souls-like kind of thing. And everything that you've said about it makes me now
I would say someone who's played a lot of Souls games, this does not feel like a Souls game as I'm playing through it. It's awesome. Black Myth Wukong.